3, 2, 1, plunging.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Intel Extreme Masters PyeongChang. As one series has concluded here on the main stream, and now we have quite the belter indeed to follow it up. We're going to be in the round of 16 to get things going next. And to my left, you heard his voice just before, you saw him before. In fact, you saw both of these guys before. We have Pig and Tasteless joining us here at the analysis desk. A really good start to the tournament, I think, even though Special showed his prowess, showed his strength, and was able to move on.
Yeah, always good to see a player who we expect great things from, starting out strong.
Yeah.
And we've said, looking at the bracket, it's a great bracket for Special. If he keeps up that form, then he could definitely make it through to the finals. And
as you recapped for us just before, Nick, Scarlett having a strong victory herself over a pretty internationally acclaimed player.
Absolutely. We were talking about it earlier, but the practice has paid off.
Yep.
Scarlett has been training hard in Korea, and we're seeing those results in her play.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's take a look at the schedule, how things have been broken down so far. Obviously, we've concluded one of our matches here on the main stream. And the next one to come up with all the other matches that are coming along are quite special indeed. That was no pun intended for our previous player, of course. Later on, we're going to have things like Kellezer and Hiramarin going up against one another. And then we have Probe against Bly to round out the day. But our first match coming up in just a moment's time, Stephano going up against Zest. This match has star-studded names available to it in these two opponents.
Yeah, it's definitely a massive match, and it's really cool because it is kind of two players who, I guess you could say, are past their prime in terms of the fact they've both been massive champions on the world stage. They've been out there. Stephano a little bit earlier, though, I think, than Zest. Zest came in 2014 when he really started to dominate. Stephano was a little bit later, a little bit earlier on, and a bigger break. But now they're both kind of climbing back up there, and I think Zest especially has looked incredibly powerful over the last few months.
Yeah.
He's starting to kind of show that form that we know him from.
I feel like this is the hardest match to call beforehand, because these are players that at points of time were so incredibly dominant.
Yeah.
That now, with them being in very different places in their careers, Stephano took a big step away from StarCraft 2 for some time. He was in med school.
Yes.
And Zest was somebody who, for a very brief period in time, was the best player in the world.
Right.
And I really don't know how they're going to perform now, but I'm excited to see what kind of game this is going to look like.
Well, our first player, of course, Stephano, representing Tunisia here for the Intel Extreme Masters PyeongChang, is a player that, you know, as you guys have alluded to, nobody is unfamiliar with in the StarCraft 2 scene, for the point that he was one of the best players in the world, arguably for years at the beginning of StarCraft 2 pick.
He created entire playstyles. I mean, this is the guy you refer to, things like the original Roach Max in Zerg vs. Protoss. This guy could not be stopped. There were so many players who could just not find a way to beat his strategies. You knew what he was going to do, he'd do it, and he'd take you down anyway. And he created such a legacy for himself during that era of the game. And he's come back now, and he's very quickly risen back to prominence. But he's hit that sort of top 16 of a lot of tournaments, and he said, you know what? The competition has gotten more fierce. The players are training harder. Everybody is just more technically skilled these days. But I'm loving it, and I'm working harder than I ever have before.
Yeah,
it's incredible because it's not just his play either. It's his personality.
Right.
For the whole industry, he's been just great.
Yes.
This guy is glowing with charisma, and it's really cool to see him back here now on such a big global stage like this.
Yeah, he's definitely a character, one that we've come to love and grow along with here in StarCraft 2. But of course, gentlemen, we have to talk about his opponent, as he's going to be making his way to the stage in a few moments' time. One of the world champions here for the Intel Extreme Masters, it's Zest.
네, 저는 어렸을 때부터 프로게이머를 꼭 해서 성공을 해야겠다고 생각했습니다. 이제 실현시키기가 어렵잖아요, 원래 꿈이라는 게. 근데 제가 이제 잘할 수 있는 게 뭘까를 생각했을 때 프로게이머라는 게 떠올랐고 그거를 실현시키기 위해 많은 노력을 했던 것 같아요. 제가 숙소에 들어가게 된 건 고등학교 이제 3학년 때 처음 들어가게 됐습니다.
Team houses have always been the way of pro gamers in South Korea. Almost every professional Korean player grew up in a team house. You might have somewhere from 5 to 20 professional gamers living in the same house. They'll be sleeping in bunk beds, and of course, the practice room. They'll train there each and every day against each other. All their meals will be cooked. There's a maid to make sure that all the laundry is done and the house is kept clean. And most importantly, the central figure of the house, the coach.
팀에서 생활하는 장점은 서로 정보를 공유한다는 것, 같은 공간 안에서 피드백을 확실히 주고받을 수 있기 때문에 개인보다는 확실히 앞서갈 수 있겠죠.
When Zest became a StarCraft 2 pro gamer, it didn't take long for him to assert himself as one of the best. For years, he was the most fearsome player in the scene. And then, as suddenly as he had risen, he fell, and no one knows what happened.
지금 현재는 제가 거의 6, 7년을 관리를 받다가 팀을 나와가지고 혼자서 이제 프로게이머 생활을 하고 있습니다. 팀 프로게이머 생활을 했었을 당시에는 그 1년마다 계속 1티어 이상 개인 대회를 우승을 했었었는데 혼자 프로게이머를 생활하고 2017년에는 제가 1티어 개인 리그를 우승을 못 했었어요. 좀 나태해졌었어가지고
혼자 생활하는 친구들이 게을러질 수밖에 없다고 생각을 해요. 왜냐면 팀 생활은 내가 하기 싫어도 정해진 스케줄대로 움직일 수밖에 없는데 아무래도 혼자 하다 보면 뭐 좀 연습할까 하다가도 그냥 좀 쉬고 싶어 그러면 안 하게 되고 게을러질 수밖에 없는 것 같아요.
원래 성적이 나름 잘 나왔었었는데 중요한 경기에서 계속 지다 보니까 좀 많이 힘들었던 것 같아요. 블리즈컨을 제가 원래 3년 연속으로 계속 갔었었는데 작년에 딱 못 가니까 항상 있었던 자리에 제가 없었던 모습을 보고 이제 더 열심히 해야겠다 생각을 했었어요.
As a pro gamer, when you go into a slump, it's going to be one of the most painful experiences of your life. You start doubting yourself. You used to win games, and now you don't. It's a devastating thing to have happen.
스스로 연습을 하는 거는 굉장히 많은 자기 관리가 필요하기 때문에 더 많이 노력을 해야 될 것 같아요.
GG, Zest is the first player to make it through for IEM PyeongChang.
국내에서 우승한 적이 오래됐기 때문에 팬들에게 우승으로 보답하고 싶어요.
Right now is an exciting time for Zest fans. After a long period of him just not delivering over and over and over, here he is, crushing through qualifiers. He's streaming some of his games, looking fantastic. The talk in the air is that Zest is back.
많은 일반인분들이 프로게이머라고 하면 이제 게임을 하면서 이제 편하게 돈을 번다고들 생각하시는 분들이 많더라고요. 게이머들이 보이는 것과 다르게 정말 연습도 진짜 많이 하고 많은 노력이 뒤따른다는 걸 좀 알려주고 싶어요. 프로게이머 생활을 하면서 어렵고 힘든 점도 굉장히 많았지만 우승을 했었을 때 그 기분을 잊지 못해가지고 저는 다시 태어나도 프로게이머를 꼭 할 거예요.
Hailing from South Korea is Zest here and going to be looking to be fearsome in this tournament as a whole. Gentlemen, looking at Zest and how powerful he is coming into this tournament, you got to be crazy if you want to put your money against him.
I can't disagree with that. Stephano is always able to cause an upset, but if I had to choose somebody, I would say Zest. I think he's still hungry, and I think he wants to reclaim that throne as #1.
Yeah, especially having kind of held that former glory, Pig, looking at the fact that he has been a Intel Extreme Masters World Champion. He has been able to go to the upper echelons of tournament after tournament in more recent times compared to someone like Stephano.
Absolutely. You know, he's been up at the top not that long ago, and as we saw in that video, his journey has been his transition out of a team house regimented environment to a self, motivated practice regimen, and he's still being a great player. But the difference between being the winner of the tournaments and being the guy who gets knocked out in the top 8 or the top 16, that's a crushing difference for someone like Zest. He expects the world of himself. And now I feel like this is his journey to be like, hey, can I actually put myself back up there? I'm not relying on anybody else. It's purely coming from inside himself.
You know, in some ways, this match and this tournament is a big test for Zest, because we do have players that rise to the very top and then they never get back there.
Right.
Whereas we have other players who have been through all the ups and all the downs of trying to be a professional gamer. And we are going to find out here at IEM PyeongChang if this is a moment where he can have a comeback story.
Yeah. If you look at how these two match up against one another, we've seen as of late someone like Stephano has been taking a long time about his games when it comes to going into a lot of matchups. How do you think these two match up against one another, Pig?
You know, I like what Artosis was saying earlier. I think Stephano is one of the smartest pro gamers out there.
Right.
I think going into this, he probably says, look at Zest's recent form, steamrolling through these qualifiers. He knows that Zest is a powerhouse, but he's been studying his replays. I was talking to him earlier, and he was kind of looking for little secrets to his play, and he was talking about some of the aggressive plays that he can use to take advantage of Zest. Because if there's one thing that we all know about Zest, and Stephano especially, is he's a creature of habit. He loves to do the same sort of build order over and over again, and he's a big macro player.
Right.
Yeah, he'll mix in an attack here or there, but he wants to play the long game, and sometimes he's a little bit predictable in how he gets there.
Right, and when you're a player of Zest's caliber, playing in these tournaments day in, day out, like the GSL, for example, over in South Korea. We're in South Korea. Got you. Nick, in South Korea, when he's playing things like the GSL, he's a well-documented player, so you can kind of capture a lot of what he does almost all the time on a regular basis.
That's a very good point. The more accomplished you are, then there's just more data that your opponent can mine about you. And someone like Stephano can absolutely take advantage of that. He can certainly try to engineer some strategies that could maybe pull the rug out from under him going into this match.
Yeah. Do you think Zest is the kind of guy that would look at somebody like Stephano's games and kind of try and dissect him, or does Zest just stick to his own game plan? What does he do in this situation?
Well, as we saw earlier in that video, Zest used to be in a big team house. He's not anymore, and that has to be a big change in how you practice. Whereas Stephano is one of those players who was starting out a lone wolf and was able to sort of train himself and train on his own. So that I don't know.
Right.
You know, it's not just a matter of how dominant was Zest early on and how good is he going to be now. It's also how can he perform with an entire environmental change in how you practice.
Pig, your thoughts from Zest's perspective?
I think Zest is definitely looking at this, saying, look at Stephano. When I was first getting into StarCraft 2, I'm sure Zest is saying, this is the guy who was at the top. You know, he was the best Zerg player, and I think there is no player that under expects Stephano in terms of what they're expecting out of him. So I think Zest will have looked at the VODs, he'll have looked at the qualifiers, he'll be hunting for the information, but there aren't as many things out there. And if there's one guy who's going to adapt to the situation and adapt to the player, it is Stephano. So I think Stephano is going to come in a little bit more unexpected strategies. Zest, while he'll have done his homework, he'll kind of just be sticking within his own realm of these are the plays I want to be making work. And especially with the new map pool, that's what he's focusing on, is how do I play against Zerg on this map pool, not necessarily how do I play against Stephano.
Is this one of the biggest fixtures of round of 16?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
And really, no matter which way the results go, it's going to be pretty cool. It's really fun to have these two guys here in a tournament like this competing against each other.
Pig, your thoughts?
It's exactly that. You know, it's just these big names, especially to see them clash from different times, different periods of StarCraft.
Right.
It's a treat for us because I think we are, huge fans of the game. That's where we all started out and still are to this day. And to see these guys clash, we've got a question mark. We say, okay, objectively, Zest is the favorite. But I want to see Stephano take some games, and if he could even take the series, I think that would be such an upset. It would be really cool to see.
All right, well, thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm going to head over to our commentary team now to figure out what they think about this upcoming match, as we have, once again, another dynamic duo, I must say myself, as they kind of have quite the history with each other. Nathanius and Rotterdam joining me for this match. Gentlemen, excited for this one?
Yeah, I love being a part of all the dynamic duos, but especially seeing these two guys go up against each other. As they say, Zest is best. I'm very excited to watch him play.
Roddy?
I'm super excited, especially because I think Stephano is a lot better than a lot of people give him credit for at the moment. Even Zest saying like, oh, I don't think his current form is that good. I actually think Stephano is really good at the moment. I think he puts in almost more work than he's ever done before. And I know that he was on top once and he is not right now, but that's also because the game has evolved. It just became tougher.
Yeah.
But he has lost a lot over the last 4 or 5 tournaments. It's always been ZVZ, and that's the one matchup that Stephano doesn't like. And even at Leipzig, after the tournament ended, he said, if I can just go to a tournament and finally not get ZVZ. Well, he got his wish. Maybe it's not the best case scenario, but I'm excited. I really want to see what he's made of in ZVP.
And for someone like Stephano, back in the day, he made his name on this matchup, Nathaniel.
Yeah, I mean, we all go back. We think about those crazy matches he had, the pause game with Hero, developing that insanely fast Roach Max that he just kind of shocked everybody with. That one took over the entire meta for ZVP for months.
Yeah.
There has been a tournament once upon a time that took place in Canada called the NASL Season 3 Finals, and that was utter domination of Stephano. He went in the quarterfinals against the Korean Protoss, won 3-0, semifinals Korean Protoss, won 3-1, grand finals Korean Protoss, won 4-0, something among those lines. I think he dropped 2 maps. He just steamrolled that entire tournament. Obviously, the meta has changed a lot, and that's not that relevant, but your statement is super accurate, James, because normally we were always like, can the foreigner upset, or can somebody beat the Korean? And that tournament it was, can one of the Koreans at least take some maps of Stephano, because that's how good he is if he's in his prime.
Yeah.
I think it goes without saying that if there is an upset match to look for in this tournament, in this bracket, Stephano beating Zest is one of the more believable ones. He has that magic about him. He's the player that's always had that magic to make those big upsets take place, and I believe that's going to make this an interesting match no matter which way it goes.
All right, well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Time to go to our next match here for the Intel Extreme Masters PyeongChang. Zest goes up against Stephano.
Zest versus Stephano, an amazing match. Korea versus our Tunisian representative in a Protoss versus Zerg. Roddy, it's good to be casting with you here in South Korea. It's been so nice. These games have been so good so far. The stage is amazing that we have, and it's just a great day for StarCraft.
Yeah, I love everything here, Nate. I mean, look at those graphics. The Zerg, the Protoss logo, everything looks beautiful. And so do these two gentlemen on stage. As I mean, you talk about charisma, you talk about looks. They've got it both, Nate.
They've got it all. Occult fan followings of both of these players. Many a fan of Zest's his modeling career on the side. He's got it going on, and of course Stephano's always had that swagger about him that just draws the fans in. It's so hard not to love both of these guys for everything that they do, and that dynamic.
In and out of game, right?
Yeah, in and out of game.
Yep. What's interesting as well is that, as you guys can see on the ticker, that these two players have never played against each other before in a competitive environment, which I think is a pretty unique stat. Of course, you could say, well, it's actually kind of logical because Zest kind of started dominating by the time that Stephano started sort of retiring, but he never left us, guys. He loves this game way too much. But there was a time where Stephano truly was playing the game as a casual. Right now, Nate, that's really not the case. He's good, he's working hard, and he's really trying.
He's really ramped back up into that practice regimen, and that's going to give us, hopefully, one heck of a series to bring you here at the Intel Extreme Masters PyeongChang. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Stephano versus Zest, and a best of 5 here in the round of 16.
Got a big smile on my face, Nate. I'm ready. I really can't wait to see these games. I hope we're going to have a bunch of long games. I hope we go to distance as well in this series, as we have loaded into our very first map. It's played on Neon Violet Square, and we're looking at the main base of Stephano.
The legendary Zerg player, our Tunisian qualifier player. He faces off against the Korean in red in the southeast. He is Zest.
Definitely a tough match, I think, for Zest as well. Of course, we just saw Special in action, and Special took care of business, as a lot of us expected. He was the favorite going into that match against PyeongChang. But if you consider Special like an outsider for this tournament, you know, then I think that Zest belongs in the category of absolute top favorites.
Yeah, and that's one of the most interesting dynamics when you look at this. And I love that they brought it up on the desk, is that Zest comes in as a player who's had that up and down. But when you're in a tournament like this where he can't play another Korean player until the finals, you really have to give him a lot of faith that you would say, I expect to see Zest make a very deep run. But Stephano plays spoiler. That's his role in half these tournaments. He doesn't need to win, but he is still known for being that player that no matter how good you think you are, you do not want to get into a scrappy series with him.
Nope. And Stephano is also very comfortable in the ultra late game. That is something that's been like a trademark in his games. In every single matchup, he doesn't mind it. But I must say, later, Nate, the more I watch some of the Korean Protoss players play, and that obviously includes Zest as well, they start to feel ultra comfortable in that super late game as well. There was a time where the Protoss army was almost unbeatable. Things changed kind of a bit, and it really felt that if Zerg reaches a certain phase in the game, things can become a little dicey for Protoss again. But when I watch guys like Zest, like Stats, like SOS, it actually it looks actually very tough for the Zerg as well. So I don't know. I had a little chat with Stephano as well. I was like, you know, what are you expecting? What can we expect? And he basically said it's going to be very hard to predict an entire best of 5 against Zest. He's like, but I have, basically what he said is that he had a couple tricks up his sleeve. He's like, and I think I'll surprise you a little bit, Kev. And I was like, all right, well, I love to be surprised.
Being surprised by Stephano is always a good time. His Overlord's going to come in with the Scout. Unsurprisingly, with the Adept opening, we have the Stargate. We see a lot of Stargate play from PVZ, Roddy. I know you're a big fan of the Phoenix. What are you anticipating out of maybe the opening of this match?
Almost every single game I'm expecting an Oracle as well, simply because ever since the Mothership Core has been removed off the game, there are a lot of Zerg builds that are incredibly difficult to defend with if you play Protoss without that Mothership Core. However, if you have a Stargate, you're going to be safe against pretty much every single opening. Opening up with a Phoenix, that is a little bit risky. Of course, Zest is scouting with the Adept. He knows that nothing too weird is happening. But the Phoenix, Nate, immediately makes my Protoss all-in senses tingling. Why do Protoss play open up with a Phoenix? Well, he could obviously make multiple Phoenixes, which would be quite cool, but that's not the case. It's Phoenix into an Oracle, so he's going to clear out the Overlords. Okay. But from this point on, it's going to be hard for Stephano to figure out what's going on in the main base of Zest. Now, Zest is not a player that has a massive reputation as an all-in Protoss. Yeah. But the moment you lose your vision and you don't know what's going on in that Protoss main,
he could be taking a 30, could be adding 7 gateways.
Yes, exactly. So it becomes scary and it becomes dangerous for Stephano.
And I think that's what makes this matchup so cool. Stephano's going to be pushed back, and in a best of 5, Zest has a lot of options. Like he can play that straight up macro game for 4 of these games, and then that one map where Stephano he feels like he finally has something going, Zest can completely just flip it on a knife's edge.
That's what these players do as well. The players like Zest that win tournaments, they can sell you on something 3 or 4 games in a row. 4 times they give you the idea that you could potentially get all in. 4 times it's a macro game, and then where you just take a couple of extra risks because you don't believe in it anymore, that's when they actually strike. As we do have that Phoenix flying in, lifting the Queen, Oracle getting 2 drone kills. That is a solid start, but not devastating for Stephano.
It doesn't take any almost any real damage on the Oracle and the Phoenix, so with the shield regen can get a bit more done. Another Oracle will cross along the map as the robotics facility and Twilight Council start up back home. The lair finishing up soon for Stephano. Things are moving forward at a decent progression, Roddy.
Ooh, this could get quite bad as these drones are very exposed. There are a couple of queens coming in. I was wondering if Zest was going to take that fight or not, because he could have potentially lifted one queen
lifted
again.
One and focused the other.
Yeah, exactly. And then those drones would have still been very exposed, because even a single spore would not have protected them against 2 oracles.
Showing the respect.
Yeah, Zest deciding not to go for it. Obviously doesn't know if a queen number 3 or 4 was very close behind it.
He started the Prism, he started Charge, and he actually canceled it really quickly and then went for the Templar Archive. So these Oracles swoop in, get 4 drone kills, while the Phoenix pokes away, almost kills one of the Oracles, and now he starts Charge.
Yeah, solid damage done here by Zest, and most importantly, keeps both of his Oracles alive. You really want to keep these Oracles alive. Not a single unit went down yet for Zest. That's obviously going to change by the time he starts warping in a couple Zealots, but he most likely will open up with a few Archons here, and, you know, hope that he can just start picking off a couple of Lings here and there.
Yeah, and of course the power of those Archons can't be understated. Quite a few Lings, as you're pointing out. Kev coming out, 16 on the way for Stephano. He's getting his Hydralisk count up, but he needs units to deal with this. The Prism has set itself up outside of his base. Charge is halfway done, and the Templar being warped in for that Archon drop.
Yeah, Stephano is definitely not underreacting against this Warp Prism follow-up by Zest with a couple of Archons in the mix as well. Making this many units of only 46 drones. This is already successful for Zest. As silly as that may sound, Zest is going to try to get a couple of Lings for free. He tags the army and he's like, Okay, well, you've got Hydras very fast. I know I've done economic damage. This game is going perfectly fine for me. And he's right, Nate. You look at the work account, 6 minutes into the game, and Zest is still even in workers. That's a beautiful spot to be in as a Protoss.
He's doing just fine. And with Charge finishing up, we're going to see the potential for those Prisms to come and play later on with the possibility of those Zealot Warpins. He does have the Archons inside of the main base. The units will have to reposition. You maybe snag a drone or two, punish this Overlord, and get out of dodge.
These are a lot of minor victories for Zest, but eventually that really starts piling up. Stephano does have a supply lead, as he's actually going to be able to get an Archon there. Well, that's more than he was supposed to get. So that's the first nice victory for...
he tried to be cheeky, and he got caught off for it. No, there was no need to lose the Archon there just yet, so a good grab for Stephano.
Yeah, but that's the first small win he gets, though, in a 7-minute game where he's still hovering around 54 workers. Does he have a high Hydra count? Yes, he's got a decent Hydra count. I think Stephano would love to maybe run across the map, but it's so hard to get that done on Neon Violet Square. Such a big map.
Yep, Archon drop comes back in, gets 2 drones, is going to be pulled away, and just keeping Stephano as well in his base. As you mentioned, with the drone deficit, Zest is happy to just let this game ride on into the sunset.
If you look purely at the numbers, you probably think like, oh, this is quite an even game, right? But this has actually been going phenomenal for Zest. Zest has played this very well, other than that one minor mistake where he lost 1 Archon, but he did so many things right up to that point that it was okay. It was acceptable to make a small mistake there. Nate, he's got Storm done before the moment that Stephano would even think about attacking into Zest.
The Hydra speed's coming in. The Baneling nest has only just started.
And we've got no lurkers. I mean, this is an absolutely fantastic position for our Korean Protoss. I do think, you know, obviously if Zest goes to a tournament, he always wants to perform, right? I mean, nobody goes to a tournament if you're as good as Zest, not to make a deep run. But I do believe that this tournament means, you know, a little something extra to him. It's in South Korea as well. Obviously, the conditions are perfect for him. Didn't have to travel very far. And so far, Nate, in game number 1, I know numbers-wise this looks close, but gameplay-wise and when it comes down to execution, this has been all Zest.
That army composition that Zest is building is really nice, with the second robotics facility cranking out more Immortals, the Archon support, the Storm support, and just that, those charged Zealots being able to dash around. We need to know, how is he going to be able to build the army that he needs to kill this? With that economy that you pointed out, still, the worker count has just been a little too close for comfort for the Zerg player.
Yep, and the biggest problem for Stephano is that he doesn't have lurkers, he doesn't have a hive on the way. This is going to be a Hydra Bane attack, something we saw a lot, you know, like 6 to 9 months ago. As War Prism is going to fly into the main base. A couple of Hydras show up.
Being able to grab that would be really nice.
Yeah, good defense by Stephano here. Okay, I actually don't think that Zest needs to do this, by the way. On creep, Hydra Link Bane can absolutely destroy this army. It comes down to the engagement, it comes down to how hard will the storms hit. He needs Baneling speed, by the way. These Banes are still a little too slow for my liking.
They're still just kind of waddling around. He does need to get that upgrade. The Prism will be picked up by the Hydras, so another nice grab for Stephano, as that's going to limit the ability for Zest to pull him around. A random Immortal just going to get caught.
Was that another Prism? Did a second Prism just get picked up there on the left side? These units are suddenly very exposed for all the good that Zest did. Oh my god, Stephano's going for this round.
He's going for that link surround. He's coming in from the south side. The Storms are going to hit the Hydras up top, but he gets the Templar. He gets one of the Immortals, and now it's just a handful of Archons being chased down. Stephano somehow catches Zest, punishing him for being so forward, so aggressive, so out on the map.
Yep, and with slow Banelings. All of this happened with slow Banelings.
Slow Banelings.
Zest has lost a lot of very expensive units. He went for a warp in the left bottom side. These
beautiful
Baneling
connections on those Zealots, Kev. The Hydra's pushing forward and just perfect kiting micro out of Stephano, showing you cannot underestimate this Zerg player. He's going to pick off these Zealots as they warp in. More Ling reinforcements coming in to help soak up for that. And these probes, once they're under attack, these are going to get so difficult. A big Zealot counterattack towards the west side, but the drones are just going to run away. Let's see what Stephano can do.
I don't think there are any storms to fall back on anymore, so it's going to actually be very hard for Zest to deal with these Hydras.
GG is called. Stephano takes game number 1 against Zest after everything went wrong at the start of the game.
Against all odds. I was not exaggerating. This was a very clean start for Zest. It was really going excellent. When you look at the tech, when you look at the units that they were working with, Stephano just gave him a little bit of a stare down. He looked over at him, wondering if he could make some eye contact there. I mean, obviously, great victory there by Stephano, taking, you know, a 1-0 lead in a best of 5. We're not going to get ahead of himself against one of the tournament favorites. But Zest,
I think it already makes this for a very spicy series, Kev.
That was a bizarre game, Nate. It really was. Everything is going Zest's way. When he moved into the middle of the map, I did say I don't think that was necessary because there were no lurkers on the way, there's no broodlords on the way. Was it really needed for Zest to stand there with a very strong but still relatively small army in the middle of the map? Then he lost the prism, and I think a second prism potentially.
It sounded like a second prism.
Yeah.
And I think the way that you said it was best. Like, if you look at that army, Hydras, Zerglings, okay, Banelings with no speed. If Zest is defensively positioned with Storm, Immortals, Charge Lot, Archon, like, you can never attack into that. But when he's out on the map and gets caught with his prisms not there, with nowhere to reinforce, he can't add zealots into that composition, suddenly everything just falls apart.
If that game goes on for a minute and a half of Zest defending and just trying to harass a little bit, suddenly instead of the 3-4 Archons, you're looking at 5-6 Archons, that the Immortal count goes up and the Storm count goes up as well, which means like Hydras and slow Banelings, Nate. Those were not even fast
Slow
Banelings.
Banelings.
That wasn't even a Baneling flank coming in from all angles, and it was slightly off creep as well. Stephano probably realizing that he dodged a couple of bullets there, and I think that's the first game is a really good indicator for how the series go. And Stephano probably thinks about that game. He's like, okay,
He's like, I caught a lucky break there.
Yeah, not exactly sure what happened, but I need to clean up my early game, because if I can still make this happen after a relatively rough early game, imagine what he could make happen with a clean early game.
Imagine if he didn't add all those Hydras and Lynx super early to deal with the 2 Archons, right? And it's scary because as a Zerg player, you never know how much the Protoss will commit to that. You can't be 100% certain as that Overlord Scout gets denied. But boy, oh boy, things are nice and exciting to kick off this second series of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching the Intel Extreme Masters PyeongChang 2018, and it's Stephano versus Zest.
And of course, maps matter a lot as well. Neon Violet Square with that pocket expand. I honestly don't think that Stephano counted on winning that map. But he got the job done. He has taken a 1-0 lead. Still has a long way to go, though. We're looking at his main base, Stephano.
Representing Tunisia here at the Intel Extreme Masters PyeongChang, and his opponent representing Korea in the red in the southeast, he is Zest.
Must have been a very frustrating way for Zest to kick off his tournament here on home soil. Had a good start, everything went according to plan, then perhaps got a little bit over-eager, or perhaps wanted to hit some sort of... Like, I'm just thinking of Zest's mind, right? Like, why did Zest run across the map? Well, Zest obviously felt very confident for all the right reasons, but I think that he felt that maybe Stephano was just straight up attacking into Broodlords, or trying to bank up going into Lurkers, and Zest is like, I'm not even going to let you get there. Like, this game has been going so well for me. I'm going to run across the map, I'm going to wipe in a bunch of units, and I'm going to end this game.
It's like he was going for some sort of anti-timing right before that tech finished, but Stephano was saying, I'm not actually going for that tech. I'm just going to build units, and it created this perfect storm where he was able to catch him out on the map, and I really feel like an integral part of that is also grabbing those warp prisms.
Well, you know, Nate, you say perfect storm, but that is what was missing. That's what you saw a couple storms.
You know what? Another storm or two might have actually helped the trick there.
A few more storms for Zest, which obviously he should have had. He had storms so fast. It's such a sweet position to be in as a Protoss player. If you can go up to storm without being under any pressure at all, and you're just banking up that energy, and at one point every High Templar is going to have 2 storms each. You can morph those bad boys into Archons as well. Zest is not going to be happy with the way that game played out, but obviously, Nate, he's a veteran. He's a tournament champion more than once. You gotta forget about it. You gotta move on and just make sure it doesn't happen again in this best of 5.
Yep, so the Adept into the Stargate once again for Zest. Roddy, talk to me a little bit about this map for Protoss versus Zerg. Quite a bit different without the pocket expand that Neon Violet Square has, and that very easily to defend tight ramp on the natural.
Yep. Now, Stephano mentioned before the series started that he could potentially have a couple of surprises for us. He may show us a side of Stephano that we're not that familiar with. If I look at this map, this could very well be a map where Stephano plays a little bit different. Maybe he stays on hatchery tag a little bit longer. Maybe he makes an insane amount of Lings and Banelings and tries to overrun Zest. I don't know if he will. More often than not, he won't. But I feel like if you want to get a little crazy, without a pocket expand here, if you want to start being aggressive, it's possible. Because if you look at Zest's side of the map, where does he expand, right? Most likely at 6 o'clock, maybe over here, but those are kind of wide open areas. It's not that easy to defend against a big swell of units.
And that rush distance across the map is also something that can play into that for Stephano being able to get those pushes. The Adept's going to come in, try to grab a drone, not going to be able to do so and just pull straight out. So we have that Phoenix, the Oracle coming in, so denying the scouting and hoping to get some work done with this Oracle, Kev.
Yep. Now, once again, it is Phoenix into Oracle, which is something that perhaps Stephano can start picking up on. It's hard to punish this once again. It's just so tough to punish Stargate builds. It's one of the most safe opening, actually, that Protoss has. But it's more important for Stephano compared to the previous game that he doesn't end up losing 2 drones immediately, and then 4 drones, and then 4 more additional drones. Because the War Prism follow-up is always going to force out units and slow his economy down. So let's see how Stephano handles it this game.
All right, that Phoenix is going to come in. We see the lift up on the Queen, and the Oracle comes in. It's going to grab 2 drones and pull out. So it's the same pickup that he was able to get the last game. The Oracle took a little more damage,
yes,
though.
And I actually think that is important. It really took some real damage already, so it's not just going to be let some shield regenerate and let's do it again. Now Zest does have his 2 Oracle. I won't say follow-up, but technically it's just 1 Oracle follow-up. He's going to try his luck one more time. In that previous game, there was this moment where this base was very exposed, remember? Yep. Stephano learned from that, and he's like, I'm not going to take that risk again, because that could have been so much worse for me than it actually
he
was.
could have lost a lot there. And we also talked about those queens he could have lost, too.
Yep. Man, this is a very fast Hydra then, by the way, by Stephano.
So the Oracles are going to see this as the Phoenix swoops by the Queens, repositioning themselves in the natural expansion. He's going to come up towards the main base. The drones pull back. He's going to get 1, 2. Second one off the Geyser and loses that Oracle. Kev, we talked about that hull damage it took from the first poke, and suddenly things already playing out a little bit differently.
That is a lot of gateways, though, but the Hydra Den was so fast for Stephano. Now, Stephano doesn't necessarily know that this is happening. We mentioned this on Neon Violet. They saw you on the idea a couple of times. No, this is just a macro opening. These links, though, spotting that prism, this is important. Stephano's like, hey, 5 minutes, 30 seconds, no attempt to expand yet. There are 2 extra drones on the way, but if Stephano makes nothing but Hydralisks from this point on, and the Hydras can group up and get together, I actually think that this is doable for Stephano. I think he could potentially defend here. This is not necessarily super all-in for Zest, but it's safe to say that he needs to do a lot of damage.
He's really committing a lot to this attack, and we do see that he's got the probe towards the third base, but that Prism steps forward. The Phoenix almost picked off. There's a lot of Hydras there, Kev.
Yep, now Zest did send out a probe. He did drop the Nexus. That is a 6-minute Nexus. It's not the latest Nexus ever, but it's far from fast. And if you make this amount of gateways, I mean, we're looking at 7-8 gates. Ooh, Stephano needs to spot this, though. Zest is starting to bank up some Zealots. Stephano is currently at 48 drones. I love it, little corner. Ooh, the creep, does it spot it?
Oh, when the tumor finishes, it might.
It's 51 drones. Stephano is starting to drone a little bit. It is very important. He finds the prism once again. I think this is the moment that these Zealots are going to show themselves.
And he sees them. Okay, so they immediately come in. Charge is ready for Zest, and he's got those 2 armies getting ready to hit from both sides. The drones are pulling away.
Good reaction time there by Stephano. Now all of the Zealots are actually going. We're taking a look at the first person view over here as well by Zest. That hatchery is taking a lot of damage. The Queens are a little too late for that party. They don't save that hatch. So Zest does get the damage done that he was looking for.
Yeah, Stephano trying to micromanage his units and spread them around those multiple positions as that Archon drop hits the main base again. He still had units on the left side to check if he took that other base, and we have a 2-base Zerg against a Protoss that's just finished this 3rd Nexus, and the Zealots even still killing Hydralisks.
Yeah, well done there by Zest. They didn't start off great, but hiding those Zealots, then distracting Stephano as well with the Prism on the left side, going for another big warp in, and then eventually getting the kill on the hatchery, which was massive. That is absolutely what Zest needed. If he doesn't get that hatch, it becomes a very awkward game.
Yeah, so the Storm is coming in. The Immortals are on the way. What will Stephano do with the units that he has? Once Storm is done, pushing up a ramp against this army is going to be almost impossible, Kev.
Yeah, and it's also going to take a very, very long time before he has Bailing speed. Now, in the previous game,
he never even got it.
No, he showed us that he didn't need it, but I find it very unlikely, Nate, that we'll see a repeat scenario of that previous game.
All right, well, the Oracle's still kind of going out, trying to tag this army with Revelation, and he will. So now Zest has full vision of Stephano's army. He can reposition accordingly to deal with an incoming assault. Storm is done, and a couple changelings will come up and get that information just right back in Stephano's hands.
Stephano has not been building drones since he lost that hatchery. Now he spots that army, and he's actually going to cancel these links, and at this point Stephano goes back to building some drones. We still have that prism being active on the right top side of the map. Stephano probably looked at the army and is like, whoo, that's a lot of High Templars.
Yeah.
He spotted it with the changelings. He's like,
How
nope.
about no?
Yeah. Does get bailing speed a lot faster this time as well. Now, this is still interesting. I feel it's very important with the amount of gateways that Zest had. He's always going to be quite Zealot heavy, right? There's always going to be a lot of Zealots on the map. It is important for Stephano that he doesn't underreact against the Zealots. Don't rely too much on the Hydras. You need a lot of Banes.
And he's going to parse a couple of these Hydras to the east side while the rest of his army tries to come up the ramp. There's the Storms as the Banelings were not able to connect with the High Templar. The Zealots keeping that bay the north side, but suddenly as he clears this out, it turns into a little bit of a flank, but another great storm from those Templar pushes the east side Hydras back, reinforcing Zealots from the northeast come in, and Stephano's army has been wiped out.
Stephano looked at the army and felt it wasn't that big and that perhaps he was able to make something happen even before bailing speed would finish up, but the splits on the Zealots were good and the reinforcements, they really sealed the deal there.
Phoenix comes with the lift up. GG Zest ties the series 1 apiece here against our Tunisian Zerg player Stephano at the Intel Extreme Masters PyeongChang. And you know, we're seeing very similar to the last game with a few adjustments here, a few adjustments there from both players to make things better in some spots and worse in others.
Yeah, I'm already surprised to see Zest bring out like a build like that with 7 or 8 gateways that early on. I kind of felt that he was going to be maybe like an Oracle or Phoenix into an Oracle and into a regular build, like 3 games in a row, and then suddenly the 4th game tried to surprise Stephano. Instead, he brought it out in game number 2 already of a best of 5. At first, I felt Stephano had a good read on it, but I think that it took so long that Stephano's like, nah, it's taking too long, you know, I'm gonna actually start building some drones. Then he was out of position because Stephano knows if he keeps that hatchery alive and he picks up 7 or 8 Zealots, that is a completely different game of StarCraft 2.
Yeah, that's the difficulty of StarCraft, is you have to be on the ball with your multitasking, catching that prism that's going for your main. There's so many angles that he can approach that base with on that map, and at the same time, you said it, the 3rd. He pulled the drones away, but he didn't have anything that could actually keep that base alive, and that allowed the late Protoss 3rd to end up working.
And those queens were so close, Nate. It's funny as well. StarCraft 2 really comes down to milliseconds sometimes. If those queens are a tiny bit faster, the first transfuse hit, and if the first one hits, the second one comes as well, and then eventually those Zealots could potentially fall. But well done by Zest, switching things up very early on into this best of 5. Once again, I felt he was a little bit exposed with his army in the middle of the map, especially since he had a lot of his army supply caught up with that prism on the right top side.
And that's where the reinforcements came from as well. He didn't have a closer point that, well, at least that he was using.
He was just cleaning up some creep, perhaps feeling that Stephano wouldn't go for it. Stephano did in the end go for it, which was once again an awkward moment to fight because Bane speed is like halfway done, and I felt the Baneling count wasn't high enough. I said it before that fight, you need to respect those Zealots, Nate, and I don't think he did.
Respect the charged Zealots, indeed. We'll have to see if this man can get it done in game number 3 here on Blackpink. We have the blue Zerg player representing Tunisia. He is Stephano.
And on the left bottom side of Blackpink, looking at the main base, one of the best Protoss players of all time from South Korea, it's Zest. Almost got used to winning a big tournament every year. But last year it didn't happen, Nate, so it would be a fantastic way for Zest to perhaps erase that memory and just start off well here in 2018.
The year to bounce back. New year, new me, Roddy, is what Zest is feeling as he comes into this tournament.
That's what I say every year, but I keep losing on the ladder, Nate.
Well, we can all hope to change. As Zest comes in with this probe scout, just trying to make sure, you know, it's so important when you get in a series like this. You had that weird first game, but you still see like Zest in that second game just kind of shows how he can control the game. And for him, you just don't want to get caught off guard like that again. Don't want to put yourself too far out there again.
The openings have not surprised me when it comes to, you know, both places expanding, taking up, and we see the Stargate openings. I'm not surprised about that part of the game, but I must say, like, anything past the 5th minute mark, I have been quite surprised. Game number 1 was a very odd game. I am sure that a bunch of Zerg players already tuned out and closed their eyes because they probably thought there is no way that Stephano is still going to win that, and they probably considered the game over. Instead, Stephano gets an almost clean victory after he just wipes out that army in the middle of the map. And then game number 2, it feels that things are starting to look better for Stephano. It felt like he had a read on it, felt like he was ready for what Zest is doing. Then he's out of position and you know, the game is just spiraling out of control from that point on. As the hatchery got picked off, Stephano made a lot of units, of then 46 drones. Eventually decided to drone up, then got bailing speed, decided to fight before bailing speed. I'm a little bit surprised, and I think this is what happens when two players do actually respect each other and fear each other in a way in the game.
Yeah.
There's a little meta evolving with each and every single map, and you don't really know what's going on in the mind of the players.
Yep, and it's two players that are very intelligent and respect each other, where it comes down to you want to make those micro adjustments in your builds, you want to make those adjustments in your strategies, but it's scary to do that. And the Stalker is going to work away on this Overlord, but
I wonder if the Stalker actually scares Stephano, because the Stalker is not super common these days this early on. But the Overlord is going to fly all the way in and is going to spot that Stargate in the back. And I actually think that Zest is a tiny bit sad about it, because you make the Stalker to deny that scout.
Yeah.
And maybe if Stephano sees a Stalker, he's like, this is probably not a Stargate opening.
do you think Stephano expected a fast Phoenix, though? Because that's what he's been doing the last few games. In this game, he does go straight for the Oracle.
I think the Stalker kind of gives away that this game is going to be a tiny bit different, but you make a good point, and this is also one of these small little things that Zest is changing up. 2 games in a row, it's Phoenix, and once again, if you can delay your Spore Crawlers, you always want to delay your Spore Crawlers, because that means those drones can mine for those additional 40, 50, 60 seconds. The Spores are going up. Can we take a look at the Queen count in each and every single base? If it's just a single Queen in the main, there is a chance for that Oracle to get some damage done.
Yeah, that Spore is mostly covering the left side of the mineral line, so we will see as that Oracle swoops in towards the main base of Stephano.
Oh, the timing on the Spore donate.
Just in time. Comes in, gets one drone off of the extractor, and is going to pull back. Oh, that Queen was shooting the spawning pool. Okay.
Queen was very angry.
Yeah.
Just show,
you know, that Oracle could have taken some actual damage on its health if it had gotten a few of those shots onto it. That was a big difference maker in the last game.
Now it's a double Oracle. 2 Oracles obviously kill workers a lot quicker than a single Oracle. And there is once again only a single Queen here, so there's a good chance that Zest is going to be able to get 3-4 drones here for his efforts. Takes a lot of damage on one of the Oracles, but they live, and that's the most important thing here for Zest.
Yep, he'll still have the utility of both of those on the field. The lair is coming in, and getting to see that as well is also always nice. The robotics facility being built in the main for that Prism follow-up that we've discussed time and time again.
I'm a little bit mesmerized by the Zergling movement by Stephano. He keeps all of them together. Once again, we have this move with the Phoenix tanking some damage from the Spore Crawler. I do love the way that Stephano changed the focus fire.
He focus fired the Oracle with that Spore. Really nice. And another switch up, Kev. The robotics bay as these Lings poke the natural expansion of Zest.
Oh, Stalkers don't have enough DPS though. That Adept is going to be a little bit too late. The additional weapon is not going to be good enough. And now potentially these Lings can spot the Robo Bay. And that is a scout that Stephano normally would not get in this phase in the game, and that's big, Nate.
Yep, these tiny moves adding up for big dividends here for Stephano in terms of information, knowing what's going on. The Hydralisk Den is finishing up. He's getting his +1 range, and the Oracle has to use some of its energy to defend too.
Now, what I would love to see is a faster Lurker Den. We haven't seen Lurkers yet in this best of 5. Lurkers are phenomenal against armies that look like a bunch of Blink Stalkers and Colossus. Now, I'm not sure if Stephano is a very big Lurker player. I'm sure that he has some love for the unit, but I'm not sure if he feels comfortable enough, because Lurkers are obviously a lot stronger defensively than they are in an offensive way, even though you can zone armies out and they can really control an area. But it's hard to run into a Protoss army with Lurkers unless you've got Hive Tech and you've got their upgrade. I'm not sure if Stephano wants to play that kind of passive game, though. If he would go Lurkers, he's basically signing an agreement. Okay, this game is going to go past the 12-13 minute mark. Does he want that? I don't know.
It's an interesting question as these Lings poke towards the third. The sentries are starting to gather some energy. Colossus being made. Extended thermal lance. Playing the ranged game. Of course, the Colossus have that nice damage against the Lings and the Hydras. Banelings will always be an interesting question too, though, and that's where it comes down to the force fields.
Yeah, but I don't think... Okay, we have the Baneling nest being thrown down now. We saw 9 additional drones on the way. And now I just wonder, you know, where's Stephano gonna go with this? I don't think he can just stay on Hydra Link Bane forever. I would really like to see an additional unit, whether it is, you know, an Infestation Pit going down for eventual Hive Tech, or if we're going to see a Lurker Den, or perhaps even a Spire. I wouldn't hate seeing a Spire in a scenario like this either. I think Corruptus could make sense.
Yeah, those switches have been the tale as old as time in that case, Roddy.
Even a small Muta switch, right, of 6-7 Mutas could potentially do quite a bit of economic damage. But I think if Stephano does nothing other than sit back on Hydra Link Bane, I think then it's going to be a rough game for him.
He's getting the upgrades now for the Hydras, that melee upgraded. Another Prism is going to be added into the mix as he gets the Templar Archives, and he's moving out with quite a bit of these forces.
Just to push the creep back a little bit, I think, but I do love how active Zest is with his army. It's a dangerous game that Zest is playing, but controlling the creep is very, very important in this matchup, and Zest is getting that done. Stephano probably looks at his army and he's like, whoo, you've got some nerve stepping on my creep with that tiny army.
And without that creep, though, he can't do too much to it. And the Spire immediately starts up as he sees those Colossi walk forward. He's getting 6 Templar back home to supplement this force. Turning them all into Archons. Hallucinated Phoenix Scout is going to dance around. Will he see the Spire?
That would be quite a big scout for Zest, and I think Phoenix is indeed going to get the confirmation of the Spire being thrown down. Now Zest can obviously start Blink, he can start attack upgrades, and he can even decide to add an additional Phoenix or 2 if he feels like he has to.
Yeah, taking that next base in the center position. There it is. There it is. Trickle in a few, maybe get that. I guess Stalkers are always like a little bit of an option for that as well.
Now, what Stephano can do, obviously, is not make that Muda switch, because I think the Muda switch is a lot better when it comes to surprise, but just go for that good old Wings of Liberty composition of Hydralisk and Corruptus. On creep, it can really get the damage done, because the moment you snipe the Colossus, the rest of that army is not that powerful, especially if the High Templar count is not very high, and I don't think it really is that high at this point. And the Immortal Backbone, it's a single Immortal. I mean, I think just going for Corruptus here would make a lot of sense.
That one's stuck. It was like kind of derping on the wall there. Yeah. 2 Archons actually being added in here. And this big push, there's a lot of Zealots in the top side of the map as well that he's going to throw towards that building expansion that just started for Stephano. So shutting that down should be easy. And this is going to spread out that Zerg army. And there's actually almost no Banelings now on the south side.
Nope, that hatchery got cancelled very quickly at 12 o'clock. At least I hope it got cancelled. There's still an Observer as well. Zest going for it, but Stephano coming in from all angles.
Trying to hit him from both sides. He immediately snipes the Warp Prism, which is a great pickup, but the Colossi doing damage in the back remain untouched on their true health. And the Zealot Archon is just going to ravage this Zerg force. The economy is on the way. If he gets a couple shots off on those drones with the Archons, it would be devastating. But he's just going to pull back from where those Banelings are. He's going to crash into the army. Goes for the recall, and he's going to lose a lot on the way out.
Yep, and he actually forgets an Archon and an Immortal, but he does take down 10 additional drones. Missing those 2 units, that actually makes this sort of acceptable for Stephano. And Stephano still has 64 drones. This wasn't really all that bad for the Tunisian Zerg player at all. It looked a lot worse than it turned out.
Yeah. These Zealots trying to run home, getting sidetracked a little bit. Doesn't want to lose this chunk of his army. Scared of the counterattack to come from Stephano.
You know what I love the most is when Zest goes for these split attacks, that he always has an Observer on the north side with a smaller army that can push the creep back. We all know how good Stephano is in spreading creep. We've seen plenty of screenshots on the interwebs of how amazing his creep threat is. In this series, it's not that he's bad, it's just that Zest is very good at pushing it back and denying Stephano to play that kind of game that he really wants.
Yep, and we see that army composition being rebuilt. He's adding in Blink now, though, getting the +3 attack. So getting a little bit more of the utility available.
Do we even have Thermal Lens in this game?
Yeah, he got range. These Banelings, ooh, they'd love a juicy connection on those Zealots. Like, yes, charge into me.
What a hero Zealot. That one hero Zealot took one for the rest of the team, but in the end, this Zerg army is still a little too powerful. These Corruptors are just diving on that Colossus and get the Prism as well.
Yeah, I mean, he gets a lot of damage in on these Corruptors, but you're right, the Colossi, very, very important part of this, as those Hydras are encroaching so close to the southeast expansion.
I think that this is almost do or die for Stephano. This is a very important moment in the game. There are not that many, I don't think there's a single Storm available, actually. These Archons are not that powerful if they're exposed. Not a single High Templar on the map. This next is going to get called. I don't think that Zest can recall there, right, Kenny? There are still a few Corruptors. This army of Zerg is looking very good.
None of the anti-air is on the Colossus, so the Corruptors are just going to go straight up to it. He's only able to get one shot off on the Hydras. Now, the Banelings are not with this army, so the Zealots can kind of close the distance, but there's just not enough to kill this force.
Well, look at those Corruptors as well. They could potentially use some Caustic Spray in the main, maybe on the Robo, maybe on the Templar Archives. That 5th base will finally get cancelled. Will it though?
Will it though? Will he cancel it? We'll see. The Corruptors are being worked away at. That Nexus is still exposed, and he's going to pull back.
I would have preferred the main just to pull those Stalkers out of position as well.
Yeah, make him blink back into the main base. He can still reposition really easily. There's one Archon with a bunch of Zealots. If he could grab those with the Banelings, that would be huge too.
More Zealots running towards the top side of the map, but Stephano has already spotted him with his creep, with his Zerglings as well. Now Zest is going back into producing Colossus. This is an odd game too. I mean, 9 High Templars being wiped in at this point, so we're gonna once again have multiple Archons, but I think Colossus are good in higher numbers, and obviously I don't think that Stephano is planning on making additional Corruptors at this point, because he probably feels like, he's gonna let me waste my supply on those Corruptors that can do anything. But these Corruptors are actually going to be useful again, so all that Stephano needs to do is get a few more Corruptors, and these Zealots!
That's around, he pulls all the Zealots in, none of them able to escape from this force, barely killing anything, and Stephano is just racking up little victories here. There's 8 Archons to act as the backbone of the anti-air, but you've got to get real close to them for them to be able to do the damage they need to.
All that Stephano needs to do is just make sure that these Hydras stay at a decent distance. Once again, finds like 8-9 Zealots on the right side of the map. Now this could get a tricky fight though. The Banelings are not going to accomplish a lot against all these Archons, and the Corruptors are not here. I'm not sure about this one, Nate. Take it away.
He's going to try to collapse on the surroundings behind the mineral line. The Archons kind of blocking themselves a little bit though. This arc is beautiful for the Tunisian Zerg as he continues to move forward. The Colossi being microed very nicely, but the Archons actually coming from the back. Some of these Hydras is kind of move committing past them, taking a lot of extra unnecessary damage, and the War Prism is going to bring the Colossus forward with a Zealot flank from the east side. Zest has found a way to topple this Zerg army.
Good micro as well with the Prism, saves the Colossus, and GG just like that. Zest holds, and Zest just wins, Nate.
Miraculous. I don't know any other way to put it. His use of the flanking the position, his micro to keep the Colossi alive the entire fight was crucial.
I am actually shocked that the game ended there. When if you looked at the army of Zest, it was a relatively simple army. It was a lot of Archons and then 2 Colossus. And that final fight was hectic. It was very hard to say how that was going to go because it all came down to the execution and what the players would prioritize. What a pretty bizarre best of 5 so far.
Yeah, it's been an excellent series so far, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to go to a quick break, and when we return, we will see the conclusion of our epic series between Stephano and Zest.